All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for jumping on tonight. I know this is obviously well after your test or tests, clinic tests, all that kind of stuff, but I still felt like it was important to go over penalty enforcement. I'm going to try to cover a lot of ground here. A lot of it should be review. I expect we all are fairly competent in penalty enforcement, but I wanted to hit the basics, kind of build off of some of those things. Then we start to get into the more complicated and complex components, specifically around what can replay do, stuff that goes on after the 2-minute timeout. So I wanted to get all those things together. So I'm going to kind of go quickly through the easy stuff, and then we'll jump into the more difficult stuff. I don't have, I used to have a Kahoot for this, but that became kind of difficult to do and balancing all of that stuff and running a bunch of things. So I might call on you to answer a question, but that's about it. So hope everybody is ready to flex those muscles to do that stuff. So what are we talking about today? I want to touch on the basic enforcement stuff, talk about some other commonly called fouls, pass interference, things like that, stuff that varies a little bit from the basic principles of enforcement. Talk about fouls on tries and in extra periods, talk about illegal touching of kicks and how that impacts enforcement, talk about our timing stuff, fouls after 2-minute timeout that are and are not 10-second subtraction situations, deal with a few other unusual enforcement situations, talk about replay, talk about mechanics, and get out of here. So the plan is to do that in about an hour. It might take a minute or two longer. We'll see how it goes, but that's the plan for tonight. So let's just jump straight in with basic principles of enforcement. First and foremost, dead ball and interval fouls. Dead ball fouls, separate in order of occurrence for administration, with the exception of if we have dead ball, UNS, or personal fouls by both teams and they're reported to the referee and we haven't completed any of the penalties, they all cancel. So 1 against one team cancels 5 against another team. If they're all UNSs or a mix of UNS and personal fouls, those things all go together. Any foul that occurs between the end of the fourth period and the start of the extra period, between possession series and an extra period, and between extra periods are enforced from the 25-yard line to start the next possession series. Those are our interval fouls, probably a UNS, potentially a personal foul. Those are the situations we're probably dealing with when we're dealing with fouls in the interval. That's different than a foul on the touchdown at the end of the fourth period that might have carryover enforcement into the extra period. That has the same result as an interval foul, but is not technically an interval foul by rule. So simple, straightforward. Let's talk about our live ball play types. And we know there are 4 types of those. The first one is a forward pass play, and that's simply the interval between the snap and the end of the pass. Basic spot for fouls that occur during a forward pass play is the previous spot, with the exception of a team B personal foul or a UNS. We would enforce that penalty from the end of the last run, provided the run ends beyond the neutral zone and there is no change of team possession during the down. So we'll tack those on. Basically, they all have old roughing the passer enforcement if they meet those criteria. If they don't, we would go from the previous spot. Some easy examples. 2nd and 7 at A35 at the snap. B75 is flagged for defensive holding against A61 at A36. A9's pass to 81 is either incomplete or it's caught and advanced to the 40, and that runner is tackled at the 50. In our first situation, incomplete pass, previous spot enforcement. Very straightforward. 10-yard penalty, automatic first down. In our second example, since it is not a personal foul or in UNS, we cannot tack on that defensive holding, and they'd have to decline the penalty in order to keep the ball at the 50. Hang on a second. Is presentation advancing correctly? Everybody sees that example that I just read?
It is now.
Now we do.
Yep, yep. Thank you.
Okay, great. Don't know why that took so long. Apologies. So the second example here, 1st and 10 at B's 45. B92 is flagged for a face mask against A12 prior to the pass, but the pass is caught and advanced to B's 35. A81 fumbles at the 30, and the ball rolls to the B's 25, where it is recovered by either A14 or B9. When it was recovered by A14, we would tack that on, right? Because it meets all of our criteria for the carryover enforcement on a forward pass. And we just take it from the 25, half the distance to the goal down to the 12.5. But if B's in possession at the end of the down, we have not met all of our criteria. We go back to the previous spot for enforcement. Everybody with me? Everybody sees that second example too, I hope?
Yes.
Great. Don't know what the lag is, but apologies for that. So, free kick plays. Free kick play is just the interval between the time the ball is kicked and the end of the kick. And our basic spot for those fouls is the previous spot, with the exception being that a foul by A in that interval could be enforced at the spot where the dead ball belongs to B. There are some specific fouls that I'll talk about later where we could have a foul by B in this interval on a free kick play that we would enforce not from the previous spot, specifically illegal wedge formation and illegal block after a signal. I'll get to that later. But it's a general rule, if it's a foul by the receiving team and it occurs in this during the free kick play, we're going to enforce that penalty from the previous spot. So here in this example, with a free kick, before the kick is caught at the 5, B42 is flagged for a low block against A15 at B's 40, and the kick is returned to A's 40. Well, that is not one of our special fouls I just mentioned. So the only option here, unless B or A wants B to have the ball 40 yards to go, which is obviously incredibly unlikely, is we would re-kick after enforcement at the 50. Or if we kicked off from the 20 following a safety, we have a flag for kickoff or for the kicking team being offsides. B9 catches the kick at the 15 and returns to the 40 where he is tackled or he fumbles. And if he fumbles and it's recovered by A, we would have to enforce that penalty at the previous spot because B doesn't want A to have the ball. But if B has the ball at the end of the down, we could tack that enforcement for the KOF or OFK, excuse me, that's written incorrectly. That's my fault. From the dead ball spot and tack on +5. Everybody with me? I imagine I haven't shattered anybody's knowledge of enforcement at this point. Scrimmage kicks. Interval between the snap and when a scrimmage kick ends, our basic spot is the previous spot for non-PSK fouls, or the PSK spot for post-scrimmage kick fouls. And again, a foul by A can be enforced at the spot where the dead ball belongs to B. Could be anything. Simple illegal formation could have potential for tackle on enforcement. And those are options, obviously not required, but I think we all understand situations in which the receiving team would like to have the kicking team re-kick versus just keeping the ball after enforcement. So if we have a snap on 4th and 12 at the 34 and we have a defensive hold against A66 while attempting a pull and shoot, that kick is caught by B5 at the 20 and returned to the 50 before stepping out of bounds. Specifically in the rules, we know that a pull and shoot is before the kick occurs. It's not a post-scrimmage kick foul by definition. Therefore, we would enforce that penalty from the previous spot, and because it's a defensive hold, carries an automatic first down. So it'd be 1st and 10 for A at A's 44 after enforcement. But if we have a situation where it's 4th and 7 at A's 15 and A's flagged for illegal formation for having 5 in the backfield, and the kick is caught at the 40 and returned to A's 45, B would likely just take that penalty tacked on to the end of the kick, or excuse me, to the dead ball spot, end of the return. So 3 of the 4 types we've talked about: pass play, free kick, scrimmage kick, and then we have running play, which is just everything else. Everything else is a running play. And we know that the basic spot, each separate run segment has its own basic spot, but the basic spot when the run ends behind the neutral zone is the previous spot, and if the run ends beyond the neutral zone is the end of the related run. The running plays beyond the neutral zone are our most likely time that we have to utilize the 3-and-1 principle, which I'll talk about in a minute when it comes to enforcement, because as a general rule, 3-and-1 does not really apply behind the neutral zone on contact fouls. So on a running play here, 3rd and 5 at A's 30, we have a handoff, run around left end, and we have a face mask at A's 28, which is behind the neutral zone, or A's 35. Then A24 fumbles at that spot, and the ball rolls to A's 37, where it's recovered by the defense. A wants the ball. They're going to enforce those penalties in the first case from the previous spot because the run ended behind the neutral zone, and in the latter case, at the spot of the fumble because the run ended beyond the neutral zone. Or if we have a situation where it's 2nd and 12 at B's 48 and A31 is running with the ball at B's 40 when he fumbles, Then we have a defensive hold during the run. The fumble was recovered by the offensive player at B's 35, who runs to B's 32. That foul occurred during a run play, and we are not able to tack that penalty on. So in this case, enforcing the penalty is still better for A than declining the penalty, but only by 2 yards. So we have to be alert to that and know that and know how to enforce that penalty. If he had just been held and then been tackled at the 32 without the intervening fumble, never lost possession, we would be in a situation where we could tack that on to the end of the run. Everybody with me there? Questions so far?
Hey, Nick, are you saying, okay, you're saying on the defensive hold that we can only tack it on to the end of the run where it happened, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, end of the related run. The related run in this case,
Okay.
the related run in this case being A31's run that ended with his fumble at the 40.
Got you. Just making sure. Okay.
Yep. So I mentioned the 3-and-1 principle before. It only applies for us if the enforcement spot is not included in the statement of the penalty. There are plenty of fouls for which the enforcement spot is included in the statement of the penalty. And obviously we have to do what the rule book says. But in all the other cases, if it's a foul by the opponent, either beyond or behind the basic spot, we enforce the penalty from the basic spot. If it's a foul by the team in possession beyond the basic spot, we enforce the basic spot. It is only situations in which the foul is behind the basic spot by the team in possession that we would enforce it from the spot of the foul. And as I said before, that's not always true. That's generally true, but not always true. And situations in which it is not always true include contact fouls by A behind the neutral zone. For these fouls, specifically the fouls I'm about to mention, committed by the offensive team behind the neutral zone, we would enforce the penalty at the previous spot. That includes any illegal use of hands, holding, any illegal blocks, any personal fouls. If any of those occur in the field of play behind the neutral zone, the basic spot is the previous spot. However, they occur in A's end zone, or rather could be also the team in possession's end zone, but in this case, the A's end zone, it's still a safety. So here's an example. 3rd and 10 at A's 4. A1's pass is completed to A81, who runs to A's 20. But prior to the pass, A71 is flagged for holding either at A's 2 or in A's end zone. Well, we know if that foul occurs at A's 2, we have to enforce that penalty at the previous spot. So we'd end up bringing it back. It'd be 3rd and 12 at the 2-yard line. But if that foul occurs in A's end zone, it's a safety, as expressed on the previous slide. 2nd and 5 at B's 40, A1's pass to A81 is incomplete, but prior to the pass, A62 and 45 are flagged for a chop block at B's 43. That's in the backfield. That's an illegal block. Our enforcement is from the previous spot. It'd be 2nd and 20 at A's 45 after enforcement. Everybody good with that?
Nick, I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
Screen pass that gets caught behind line of scrimmage.
Mhm.
Now, after that catch, we have a new running play, correct?
That is correct.
And then we have a block in the back. That is the only time anything behind the previous spot is where we would enforce from after that catch.
So your example has, like, let's say we're snapping the ball at the plus 30. And the screen pass is caught at like the plus 33. And the block in the back is like at the 31.
Yep.
Okay. That would still meet our criteria here for enforcing that penalty at the previous spot.
Even though we have a new running play.
Right, because it is a running play, but it still is a contact foul by A behind the neutral zone.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter where that run ends. If that run ends behind the neutral zone, beyond the neutral zone, as long as that foul's behind and it's one of those fouls in the category that we've mentioned before, it still has previous spot enforcement as long as it's in the field of play.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about post-scrimmage kick fouls. A post-scrimmage kick foul BSK stuff is only applicable if all of the following statements are true. Foul has to occur during a scrimmage kick. The kick cannot be a try, a successful field goal, or in an extra period. The ball has to cross the neutral zone, and Team B will next put the ball in play. If all of those conditions are met, our basic spot is the spot where the kick ends. If we're missing any of those situations, the penalty is enforced at the previous spot, and generally, and will result in A retaining possession of the ball. So here's some examples. 4th and 12 at A's 40. While A1's punt is in the air, B6 holds A43 at B's 35 in the first case, or B's 15 in the second case, but the kick is fair caught by B7 at B's 25. Well, in the situation where the holding occurs at B's 35, which is in advance of the end of the kick, that penalty would be enforced at the end of the kick. So we go from the 25 back to the 15. However, in the second case, where the foul is behind the end of the kick at the 15, we would have to go half the distance to the goal from the 15-yard line using the 3-and-1 principle that we talked about before. So in that case, it'd be 1st and 10 for B at B's 7.5. Another example, 4th and 7 at B's 49. While the punt's in the air, we have a block in the back at B's 20. And the ball is then muffed by B17 and recovered at B's 15 by a ground at either B6 or A14. Well, in the first situation, that recovered by B6 ends the kick at the B's 15-yard line. Block in the back is in advance of the end of the kick. It meets all of our post-scrimmage kick criteria. We would enforce that penalty half the distance to the goal from the dead ball spot, the post-scrimmage kick spot. But in the second case, A14 has the ball. We do not meet our post-scrimmage kick foul criteria. As a result, the best option for A is to decline the penalty, because enforcing the penalty would give them the ball back, true, but to give them the ball back at B's 39, which is not better than B's 15. I'm not great at math, but I know that to be true. I will take your muted silence as hilarious laughter and move forward. Let's talk about some other commonly called fouls. DPI, different than some of our other fouls that we've talked about so far, because if a foul is fewer than 15 yards from the previous spot, the ball belongs to A at the spot of the foul. That's not always true. There's situations when it's not true, which we'll get to in a second. If the foul is 15 or more yards from the previous spot, it'll be A's ball 15 yards from the previous spot. But if the ball is snapped between B's 17 and B's 2-yard line, and the foul is at or beyond B's 2-yard line, we will maximize the enforcement down to B's 2. But if we're snapped on or inside B's 2, or on a try from B's 3-yard line, and we have defensive pass interference, we would go half the distance to the goal in those cases in the event that the foul occurred beyond half the distance to the goal from that spot. For example, interference, B17 interferes with A16 in B's end zone. The ball was snapped from A, B's 30, B, B's 10, or C, B's 2. Well, in A, we can go with a full 15. We'll go full 15 from the 30 to the 15. That's it. In B, we'll go from the 10 down to the 2, because that's as far as we can go, because we're snapping between the 17 and the 2-yard line, and the foul's beyond the 2. From the 2, we can go to the 1, half the distance to the goal. Those are our options with enforcement, and it's first down in all of those cases. Obviously, DPI includes an automatic first down.
Hey, Nick.
Yep.
This is Nick also. For this type of instance, since it's in the end zone, let's just say if we started on our left hash and they threw it to the far right hand, or what would be the right hash. For these enforcements, you're still coming back to the left hash and then going up, correct?
That is correct. So the enforcement of the penalty to the 2, or half the distance to the goal, is considered not we are not considering that to be enforcement from the spot at the spot of the foul, but rather from the previous spot. So in the situations that Nick mentioned, where the previous spot was the left hash and the pass was incomplete with interference to the right corner, we would still go back to the previous spot to enforce the penalty from, in the second case, the 10 down to the 2, or in the third case, from the 2 to the 1. So thanks, Nick, for throwing that in there. I appreciate that. So kick catch interference. For most kick catch interference fouls, it's 15 yards from the spot of the foul.
Nick, quick question for you, sir.
Yes, Billy D, what's up?
So if we have a foul that's inside of 15 yards, that's a spot foul, right, for pass interference?
Correct.
So at that point, we would not be going from the previous spot. It would be placed at the spot closest to, between the hashes, close to where the foul occurred.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Just want to make sure we're clear with that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, when I was addressing Nick's point, if we go as far as the rules allow us to go, right? Which is either the full 15 or to the 2-yard line or half the distance to the goal because the foul is beyond any of those spots. That would be considered enforcement from the previous spot, which would include previous lateral ball position. If we're putting the ball at the spot of the foul, we do need to move the ball laterally to the spot nearest to where the foul occurred. So if we snap the ball at the 30 on the left hash and the interference occurs at the 20 on the right hash, we would move the ball to the right hash at the 20-yard line. Is that what you're looking for, Billy?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick, sorry, dude, I got one more.
Yeah, how dare you, Jim, in this.
I know it.
You ask questions.
Shame on me.
Awful.
Snap at the B2 left hash. We have DPI on the right hash on the 1. We would move to the right hash.
That is a tremendous question. I would make the argument that at or inside the 1 we would be going half the distance to the goal. And so I would go back to the previous spot.
Okay.
Nick, I've always been told half the distance on that.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate that. But yeah, I would say, I think because the statement back here talks about the penalty occurs beyond I would put at the yard line also being beyond the yard line to make it easy, and just go with half the distance being previous spot at the 1 in the case you mentioned. All right, other DPI questions. Okay, so let's talk about KCI. For most kick catch interference fouls, we're talking 15 yards from the spot of the foul. But if we have kick catch interference on a free kick play against a player who's signaled for a fair catch behind the 25, we're going to the 25 and then enforcing the penalty. Similarly, if we had kick catch interference in the end zone, we'd award a touchback and then penalize 15 yards. So that could be the 25 on a free kick or the 20 on not a free kick. But those are things that are different from just the simple 15 from the spot of the foul. Fouls during or after a touchdown, field goal, or try. If it's a foul by the non-scoring team, we would enforce any personal fouls or unsportsmanlike conduct penalties on the try or the kickoff. But any 5 or 10-yard penalties are declined by rule unless illegal touching of a kick makes enforcement of the penalty possible, which I will get to in great detail, probably more detail than you want here in a minute. DPI on tries from on or inside B's 3, half the distance, mentioned that before. If a foul occurs after a touchdown, but before they're ready for play on the try, or it's a live ball penalty enforced as dead ball penalty on a touchdown play, those can be enforced on the try or the kickoff. Once we've blown the ready for play on a try, however, we have to enforce that penalty immediately. On a successful field goal, we would cancel the score and enforce the penalty at the previous spot unless it is a personal foul or unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, in which case they could keep the points, accept the score, and enforce the penalty on the kickoff or succeeding spot in extra periods. And also a live ball enforced as dead or a dead ball foul after the field goal is enforced at the succeeding spot. If we have a situation, and I've never been involved in this, and I hope that you are never involved in this, where we have multiple penalties to be enforced on a free kick, and it causes either team's multiple penalties cause either team's free kick line to be behind their own 5-yard line, we will enforce those. Instead of enforcing them now, we will kind of put them in our pocket and enforce them at the next succeeding spot following the kickoff. Has that happened to anybody ever?
It's never happened to me, but this was one of those bizarre questions years ago. I remember on a test. I knew the 5 is as far back as you could do. I did not know that those kind of carry over, on a whiteboard waiting list or so to be carried over. So so thank you. I did not know that.
So I think the most likely situation in which this might happen is where a team concedes a safety, and then we have 3 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties following the safety against the team that conceded the safety. And so now they're kicking off from the 20, now they're kicking off from the 10, now they're at the 5, and we still have another penalty to enforce. We cannot move them back inside the 5-yard line. So once we have that kickoff and the return, we take that last 15-yard penalty and give B the ball 15 more yards with enforcement.
So Nick, the example that I have, there was a semi-pro game, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Had after the score, and then sportsmanlike against the scoring team, and then after the free kick, there were two. There was a personal foul, live ball. No, I'm sorry, two dead ball unsportsmanlikes against the kicking team. So we ended up with a situation where we had about, what's that, 30, 45 yards of penalties to enforce and not enough yards to move.
That's right. The lesson from that play you just mentioned, Billy, is of course, don't work semi-pro football.
Yeah.
If he's on the line and he does something to make a false start, he goes to B.
Dispensation.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on from here, loss of down fouls by A. I'm not going to read all of these. Here's the full list of all the loss of down fouls by A. Remember that if the loss of down foul occurs during the end of the second quarter or fourth quarter as time expires, the offended team could elect to extend the period. If they don't, the period ends due to the loss of down component of this. Our automatic first down by fouls by B, there are fewer titles of them, but more fouls practically. DPI, any personal foul, any unsportsmanlike conduct, and defensive holding are all automatic first down fouls by B. Fouls on try, any questions about that? Okay. Fouls on tries and extra periods before change of possession. If it's a foul by A, just enforce it as normal, replay the down, they can't score. If it's a loss of down foul, the try fails with no carryover enforcement for that particular foul. If it's a foul by B, we would enforce it as we would in any other play. Personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct fouls can be enforced on the try, kickoff, or the succeeding spot, depending upon the situation. And 5 and 10 yard penalties are declined by rule. Okay. So have I thrown a bunch of things at you? Yes, I get that. But I'm going to pose some questions to the group here. I'm going to put a question up. I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to call somebody to answer the question. It's a multiple choice test. So you can just say which color it is, and we'll go through that. That'll make it easy. So first question. During a try from B's 3, A7 runs to B's 2, retreats to B7, and throws a pass to A88, who catches the ball in B's end zone. Ron K, what is the correct answer of these choices?
Sorry about that.
No
Green,
worries.
green.
You got green. You got illegal forward pass, try fails, free kick at the 35. That is correct, right? The loss of down per component is the only thing that matters. We don't carry over the 5 or the 10 yard penalty as a result of that. So that's the correct answer. Thanks. Number 2, Paul Oshansky, you're on deck. During a try from B's 3, A22 takes the handoff and runs through the B gap on the right side of the formation and crosses B's goal line. But A74 is flagged for offensive holding at B's 1. What do you got?
Give me a second.
No worries.
It'd be, what is that, mustard or yellow or whatever color that is?
So you got yellow. You got to retry at the 13.
Yes.
Okay. So I agree with the retry, but let's think through the enforcement here. We got to hold at the 1, which is beyond the neutral zone. So we should be going 3 and 1 from that spot, right? So
Yeah,
we should
that's so
instead,
blue.
we should be in blue, right? Retry at the 11. We'll go, A's going to get an opportunity to retry the try, but it's going to be from the 11 yard line. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Seth, you're going to be on deck for this. During a try from B's 3, B9 intercepts A7's pass and returns it to B's 15 where he's tackled. B79 was flagged for DOF at the snap.
Try from B3, B9 intercepts A7 pass, return to pick the two where he's tackled. B79 is flagged for DOF to both sides at the snap. I have yellow, a retry at B's 1.5.
Right, because that's a foul by B prior to the change of possession. We'd enforce it as normal. DOF's enforced the previous spot, half the distance to the goal. And we're all good there. Thank you. Frank Fidek, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
You got much fewer, you have many fewer options here, so you should be able to nail this one. During a try from the 3, A22 runs the ball into B's end zone. During his run, B92 grabs and twists A22's face mask.
So we have the, excuse me. Blue.
Blue, right? Successful
Yes.
try. Personal foul can be carried over with enforcement. So we then would free kick at the 50. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
Thank
Now, after a change of possession, we have to think about whether or not B got the ball with clean hands. B has the ball with clean hands and had not fouled, or excuse me, B did not get the ball with clean hands and had committed a foul. Then A retains possession after enforcement. But if B has the ball with clean hands, we will not repeat the down. Any foul by the scoring team cancels the score, but the penalty will be declined by rule unless it's either unsportsmanlike or a flagrant personal foul. Any situations where we would have offsetting fouls that meet these criteria would offset at the succeeding spot, with the exception being if one team's foul is an unsportsmanlike conduct or flagrant personal foul, we would have carryover enforcement. So here's another question. Nick Garagosian, you're on deck here.
Okay.
Mark, you're in the hole. Richard Chadwell, you got the next one. So be ready. During a try from B's 3, A7's pass is intercepted by B6 in B's end zone.
Mhm.
He throws a pass to B7, who catches the ball at B's 1 and runs it into A's end zone.
So after the interception, team B threw the ball?
Yes, after interception, Team B throws an illegal forward pass from their own end zone.
Wow. So it's an 1 point. I'm gonna go with green. Well, it's not green because did he come out? He throws the B's in the end zone, he throws the B7 and catches the ball. I'm not right here. I'm going with green.
You are correct in that you are not correct.
Okay.
So the one thing that's important here is we will never have a 1 point safety by penalty on a try. All right. So B got the ball with clean hands. Their penalty is declined by rule because it is not it's a 5 or a 10-yard penalty and it's not a flagrant personal foul or unsportsmanlike. So all that happens here is that they can't score, but we will not repeat the try.
So if this was a 4th down play and not a try, it would have been a safety, correct?
Correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Mark Beauperlant. I apologize if that's wrong. I'm doing my best.
Nice job.
All
Close
right.
enough.
Close enough. I appreciate close enough. I'll take it. Many people screw up my last name too, and I don't particularly think it's that difficult, but whatever. So here's your question. First series of the first extra period. 2nd and 10 at B's 25. A7's pass is intercepted by B16 at B's 5. During the return, B75 is flagged for blindside block at B's 20. B16 fumbles the ball at B's 30, and the fumble is recovered by A17, who returns the fumble to B's 5.
It's a lot to digest here, but I'm going to go B 1st and 10 at A25.
Bingo.
Mhm.
B got the ball with clean hands. Blindside block is a personal foul, but it's not a flagrant personal foul. So there is and that penalty is declined by rule. A will not snap the ball again because B was good when they got the ball. So all that happens is we move to the second series of the first extra period. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Richard. First series of the first
Yep.
extra period. 2nd and 10 at B's 25. A7's pass is intercepted by B16 at B's 5. During the return, B75 is flagged for taunting at B's 20. B16 fumbles the ball at B's 30, and the fumble is recovered by A17, who returns the fumble to B's 5.
Okay. So, A did not score. So that try is over. We would tack this on because it is an unsportsmanlike. It will be B ball, 1st and 10 at A's 40, green.
That is correct. So all of the things that you said are the reasons that we would enforce the penalty in that manner. We're in a situation here where A cannot maintain possession of the ball because they did not score. B got the ball with clean hands, but this is an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that needs to be enforced, and we would do that to start B's series. Jim Bohr, you're on deck. It's all you right here. Billy D, you're in the hole. First series of the first extra period, 2nd and 10 at B's 25. A has 5 players in the backfield at the snap. A7's pass is intercepted by B16 at B's 5. During the return, B75 is flagged for taunting at B's 20. B16 fumbles the ball at the 30. Fumble is recovered by A17, who returns the fumble but does not score.
Those are going to offset. And well, no, they're not going to. I got way ahead of myself. So we have a foul by A at the snap. B has the ball with clean hands. 75 is got the UNS. 20, 16 fumbles, 30. That is going to be they do not offset because you have a live ball treated as dead. So we're going to go back 5 to the 2nd and 15 at the 30, and then we're going to go 15 forward. And that is going to be an automatic, or not an automatic, yes, an automatic first down. So A is going to have a 1st and 10 at the 25. Colonel Mustard.
So who's going to have the ball?
A will have the ball.
Okay, so let's break this one down, right? So does B get
No,
the
they're,
ball with
no,
clean
they're
hands?
not going to have it.
Does B get the ball with clean hands, right? The answer to that
Mhm.
question is yes. You'd agree with that, right?
Yep, green. So we got to go green. B's ball at the 40.
Yeah, right. So why is it green? It's because A's penalty would offset B's penalty in normal circumstances at the succeeding spot, or rather would cancel at the succeeding spot. However, because B's penalty is unsportsmanlike, we can't cancel it with unless we had an equal unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that we could cancel it with,
Okay.
or a flagrant personal foul. So in this case, A's penalty kind of just goes away, and we still have to enforce B's penalty. So, thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let's shift gears a little bit here and start talking about illegal touching of the kick and its impact on enforcement. If A illegally touches a kick, B can elect to take the ball at an illegal touching spot. However, we cancel this option if there's an accepted penalty for a live ball foul by either team. If there are offsetting fouls, either of those situations cause us we would cancel illegal touching in those cases. If we have a situation in which A commits an illegal touching violation in B's end zone, we consider the spot of that violation to be B's 20-yard line. If B commits a post-scrimmage kick foul in that case, post-scrimmage kick spot in that specific circumstance is also B's 20, which is different than how we would treat PSK and illegal touching in most of the other cases in the game. So I'm gonna say this once, but it's gonna I have like a chart that'll be on slides. I just want us to all follow along here. In every play that we're about to mention, A1 illegally touches the kick, then B1 recovers the loose ball, then B1 fumbles, then A2 recovers B1's fumble. Now, that's a lot of stuff to remember. So I made this handy chart. Okay. We've got the kick. We've got the illegal touching by A1 is the beanbag. Ball still loose. B1 recovers is the first football, then the run and fumble, which is followed by A2's recovery and then A2's run. So that's going to be on all the slides. The reason this is going to be on all the slides is because when the foul occurs is very important in this sequence. So, for example, in this case, if the foul occurs after the illegal touch, but before B1's recovery, then we would deal with this chart. And I do have this as a worksheet that is on the Google Drive that I will link in the comments of the YouTube video that I upload this to, so you can find it if you want it, or I'll put it in the next email if that's easier for everybody. Because you probably won't watch this YouTube video because you're all here, which thanks. But if we take this whole timeline here, right? This whole timeline that I've laid out, and we end all these charts with either A2 scores a touchdown or A2 does not score a touchdown. Okay. And then we're dealing with types of fouls. We have a personal foul by B during the kick, and A2 scores a touchdown. And that foul occurs, like I said, this is during the kick in this interval. Then we have a touchdown for A, and we would penalize on either the try or the kickoff. However, if A2 is stopped short of B's goal line, it's going to be A's ball with enforcement of the penalty from the previous spot, because this would be a post-scrimmage kick foul, except that B will not next snap the ball. So accepting the penalty puts us back at the previous spot, where we would just enforce the 15 yards and go from there. In the case in which this were, say, a hold by B during the kick, and A2 scores a touchdown, in that case, A does not get to keep the ball. In fact, it's going to be B's ball at the spot of illegal touching, or A's ball from the previous spot. Those are the situations. But A doesn't get to keep the touchdown here. If A2 is stopped short of B's goal line, then it's A's ball with a penalty from the previous spot for the reasons I mentioned previously.
Hey, Nick.
However, these were fouls by A. In any of these cases, it's going to be B's ball at the illegal touching spot, which is the most likely outcome for B, because unless they want to return the ball to A after enforcement and have them re-kick. And there's no situation in which A keeps the ball here if they have fouled after committing illegal touching. If we move the foul, however, from before the B1's recovery to during B1's run or fumble, then all of these things change. If we had that same personal foul by B during the run that results in a touchdown, we still have the touchdown for A with carryover enforcement on the try or kickoff. But if A2 does not score, it's going to be B's ball. And the reason it's going to be B's ball is it's either B's ball because the penalty is occurred during B1's run, not A's run, and as a result, it would have to be enforced from the spot of B1's fumble, or B would get the ball if that penalty were declined at the illegal touching spot. And if this were holding by B during the run, it's still going to be B's ball in either of those two cases, whether or not A scores a touchdown, because a hold does not have carryover enforcement and would in fact be declined by rule in this case. Does that make sense to everybody?
Nick, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
How do you know who to go to first and give the options to?
That's a good question. Well, in some of these cases, right, there aren't any options, right? Like we know, and if we're looking at just this slide, assuming that it's either a hold or A2 does not score, we know it's going to be B's ball, right?
Okay.
Let's just cross this option off for the purposes of this discussion. If we're dealing with any of the other three options, we're only going to talk to A, and we're going to give A the best result, which is the worst field position for B, right? You would agree with that?
Correct.
Right. So there's not really a discussion to be had here. In the previous sequence, if A is the team that is offended, we would want to talk to them first. Like we're always going to talk to the offended team first in these cases. in these situations. I don't think that changes just because there's post scrimmage kick fouls here.
Yeah, Nick, the only thing I'd say to add on to that though is that in general, what's super important about what we're looking at right here and is majorly being hand waved is that it's really important that we note where the beanbag is, where did the kick end, or in this case, where is the illegal touch, where did the foul occur and by whom, and when did the foul occur? Because that's going to be probably more of your discussion than who has options.
Yes, that's very true. I obviously was trying to simplify the discussion here with the chart, but obviously the spots of these things are super critical.
Thanks, guys.
Nick, I think the win is really the most critical because that kind of is a domino for everything else.
Mhm.
You know, when did the foul happen? Because as we know, there's literally every one of them could change possession or anything.
Right. I agree. With dealing with fouls by A in this case are not incredibly important because it's going to be B's ball with enforcement of the penalty, because the fouls in this case, if they occurred during B1's run and fumble, would be enforced from the end of B1's run and fumble if they're fouls by A. If the foul occurs during A2's run, sorry, I'm going to click behind here. So the foul occurs in this last sequence during A2's run, and it's a personal foul by B during A2's run, obviously still touchdown, carryover enforcement. If A2 does not score, whether it's a personal foul or a hold, it's going to be A's ball because they would accept the penalty, which would cancel the illegal touching privilege, and we would enforce the penalty from the end of the related run. But if it were this one case where it is not a personal foul by B during A's run and A's run ends in the end zone, that penalty becomes declined by rule. And if that penalty is declined by rule, the only option is the illegal touching spot. So A really loses in this particular case here. Is that clear to everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Computer. About this, Richard?
Okay. I'm actually running way behind where I thought I was going to be, so I'm going to skip over some of these questions. They have not changed much from a previous version of this presentation that is also on the website. So I don't want to delay too much on these, but I'm going to read through these examples and make sure we all understand this. So 4th and 5 at the 40, we have illegal touching at B6. B7 recovers the loose ball, B's 10 and returns it to the 20 where he fumbles. A6 recovers the fumble and runs into B's end zone. During the kick, B17 holds A5. In this particular case, this is during the kick. It does not meet the post-scrimmage kick criteria. So we do have enforcement options. A cannot keep the touchdown because in order to do that, they'd have to decline the hold, which would give the ball back to B as a result of the illegal touching. But if they accept the penalty, it does have previous spot enforcement because it would otherwise be a post-scrimmage kick foul, but B doesn't have the ball. To contrast that, we have this same situation. Everything about that play is exactly the same, except that foul is instead a personal foul for a clip. Make sure I didn't miss something here. Yep, all the same, except it's a clip. In this case, it's a touchdown. A keeps the touchdown. The enforcement of that penalty can be on the try or the kickoff. All right. In the interest of covering more ground, I'm going to skip ahead to some other parts of this because there was only one other question anyway, and like Billy said, I don't want to hand wave it, but I am in fact going to actually literally hand wave that question away, and we move forward in the presentation. So now we've changed some criteria with our timing stuff, and now we're dealing with fouls either before or after the 2-minute timeout. If we stop the clock to complete a penalty by a team ahead in the score, or either team in a tie game after the 2-minute timeout, the offended team retains the option to have the start the clock on the snap if it would otherwise have started on the ready. This does not work the other direction. The clock was going to start on the snap, but there's a foul. I can't opt to start it on the ready for play. even if I wanted to do that. From a 10-second subtraction standpoint, this again, running clock after the 2-minute timeout expanded from last year to include any time after the 2-minute timeout. Any foul that prevents the snap, false start encroachment, DOF with contact, intentional grounding. What was that? Come on. Now it's trying to lock up me. Incomplete illegal forward pass, illegal backward pass out of bounds to conserve time, or any other foul committed with the intent or result of stopping the clock can trigger a 10-second runoff. That would include UNSs and UNRs. Additionally, we do have non-foul situations such as injuries, helmets off, and instant replay. So here's an example. I'm just going to do one. 3rd and 5, Bees 25, 45 seconds to go in the second quarter. A3 runs to Bees 23, returns to Bees 27, and throws a pass to A88, who's standing in the end zone. The ball's tipped into the air by B8 and lands incomplete with 32 seconds remaining. This foul does meet our 10-second runoff criteria because it's an illegal forward pass and it's incomplete. If that pass had been caught in the end zone by A88, it would not be subject to the 10-second runoff options because the pass was, while illegal, was not incomplete. I'm going to skip ahead to some other unusual enforcement situations. Illegal wedge formation on a kickoff. I mentioned that way back when we started about free kick fouls during free kick plays. 15 yards from the spot of the foul or from the dead ball spot if the dead ball spot is behind the spot of the foul for enforcement. So this foul could occur during the kick or during the return, but is enforced with these specific enforcement criteria. We have an illegal scrimmage kick for running beyond the ball or beyond the neutral zone and kicking the ball, or having been beyond and returning and kicking the ball. That causes the ball to become dead. 5-yard penalty, previous spot, loss of down. Other fouls include illegal blocks after a fair catch signal on a free kick. That is a 10-yard penalty from the spot of the foul, even if that occurs during the kick, which inevitably would have to occur during the kick. Obviously, a scrimmage kick, if it occurred during a scrimmage kick, it's just a post-scrimmage kick foul. And then I talked briefly about the clean hands principle as it related specifically to fouls during tries and extra periods, but it broadly is true throughout the whole game. As long as the team in final possession hasn't fouled before gaining possession, they can decline their opponent's foul and keep the ball with enforcement of their own foul, with the exception of personal fouls and UNSs on touchdowns. Skipping examples for that, let's talk briefly about instant replay. So there are some specific fouls that instant replay can create on its own. Those fouls include illegal forward pass or illegal forward handing, and that would include if we originally ruled a pass backward, but replay can prove that it's forward, we could then create an illegal forward pass if, like, they were trying to throw one of those swing passes out into the flat to a receiver who was supposed to catch a backward pass, and he throws a forward pass. If we reverse the ruling on the field of that first forward pass to forward, that makes the second forward pass now an illegal forward pass, and replay could create that as a foul. Or if we have a foul for a player beyond the neutral zone when kicking the ball, or for blocking on a free kick before A is eligible to touch the ball. I will note in that particular case, if we have a foul, if we have a potential for a foul for that, the replay could create, but the receiving team has possessed the ball, replay generally will not stop the game to create that foul, but it could be reviewed and challenged by the receiving team if they wanted that to be tacked on. Illegal substitutions, either because we had a flag down for more than 11 players on the field and we were wrong, or we didn't have a flag down when we should have, replay can create that. Illegal touching of a forward pass, a player who is touching or recovering a kick or loose ball who is or has been out of bounds during the kick, or a clear and obvious targeting foul, which is still how it's written in the rule book. So any of those situations, replay can create. Replay cannot create other fouls. There are situations where a referee's announcement could indicate that we would have had a foul if not for some other criteria that replay could then disprove, like there is no foul for defensive pass interference because the pass was touched behind the neutral zone. Replay can prove that the pass was in fact not touched behind the neutral zone. We put the flag back down for DPI. Skipping these examples.
And I'm sorry, Nick, for someone like me who doesn't really, who's not part of replay very often at all, are those the only items that, on that previous slide you had where replay can create a foul, so to speak?
Yeah, replay can only create those fouls by looking at the video and finding those actions to be illegal. But on this slide that I just pulled up, these are situations where replay can determine some point of fact that based on our announcement, a referee's announcement, replay could then tell us, actually, the thing that you said was why you didn't call this is actually not true. So we can put a flag down. That's
Thank you.
not replay creating a foul per se. That's replay telling us something that we thought was untrue. So you can see here in these examples. For ineligible player downfield, OPI, DPI, if the announcement indicates that there's no foul because the pass was either touched behind the line of scrimmage or tipped, and replay can prove that actually that's not true, we would go back and put a flag down. But that's not replay creating a foul. That's replay telling us information as a result of a review that's related to the foul, but is not the foul itself.
Good man, how are you?
Similarly, for roughing or running into the kicker, if there's an announcement that there's no foul for either of those things because the ball was touched or blocked near the kicker, and replay can prove that that's not true, they could put a flag down. Or intentional grounding, if the referee announces that there's no foul for intentional grounding because the ruling on the field is a fumble, but we can come back and prove that in fact it was a pass, then replay can create grounding based on that information. And again, that's not, I know what I said. Replay did not create the fouls in that situation. They just demonstrated to us that some of the conditions of the foul that we thought were not present were in fact present. But we can only do that if we announce those things. If we don't, if referee doesn't turn the mic on and address any of those situations, replay's not going to get involved to do any of those things. So if the referee just doesn't call roughing the kicker and doesn't tell everybody why, and replays indicate that he should have, replay's not going to stop the game and do anything about that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Billy.
Hey, Nick.
Yes.
So, does philosophy then dictate that we should come on and announce that if it's close and we think replay might need to get involved, or what's kind of the teaching on that?
That is a tremendous question that I'm going to direct to the referees on the call. Billy, you're up.
Nice. In general, kind of the way Nick said it, there are certain things that you need to say. So for instance, and if you get in the habit of doing it, you don't have to worry about doing it as a special case. But anytime there's a contact with the kicker and you don't have a flag because you believe that the defender was either blocked into or touched the ball, then you need to make that clarification. And obviously replay can't review whether or not the defender was blocked into, but they can review whether or not that defender that ran into the kicker touched the ball. So if B1 blocks the kick, but B2 runs into the kicker, he doesn't get a pass. That is a foul. So it's that kind of stuff they can look at. Same thing with intentional grounding. If you're ruling that there could have been intentional grounding, then, we need to say the ruling on the field is a fumble. Therefore, there was no intentional grounding, blah, blah, blah. Replay looks at it, says, no, that was a forward pass. And now you have intentional grounding. Then you can work that out.
Thanks. All right. The last thing I want to talk about tonight, just briefly, is mechanics of enforcement. Obviously, this is going to cover, I think I might have covered both 7 and 8. But just briefly, calling official, dead ball prelim, unless we have multiple flags down, make sure we get flags in the right spot. If we got multiple flags down, make sure the flags match. We don't want to we want to make this look as crisp and clean and obvious to everybody watching as possible. If enforcement is obvious, just give the referee the number, let the referees do their thing. If we've got offensive holding on a 25-yard gain, I don't think we need to talk to the defensive coach. I think we could all agree that that's pretty straightforward. We have defensive pass interference on an incomplete pass. What are we talking about? The referee If enforcement is obvious, no prelim, flip your mic on, proceed to announcement, do your thing, move the game along. If there is an option required, we can go ahead with a prelim and then get the option from the offended coach. I would encourage everybody, when you're dealing, if it's a sideline official, you can facilitate this process so much more quickly when you talk to coaches, when there are options, to just be able to tell the coach what the results of either enforcing or not enforcing the penalty are, and not talking about accept or decline. Like, hey, coach, 3rd and 2 or 2nd and 20. What do you want? That you just have to know what that means when he answers that question. That'll speed up your conversations with the coaches, but that does mean that you have to be really good at enforcement and not say the wrong thing. The center judge or an umpire in a crew of 7 is primarily responsible for marking off penalties. Have to know enforcement so they can enforce penalties with minimal involvement of the referee. Ideally, we do this as a well-oiled machine. Once we've all confirmed what the penalty is, we're ready to go. We don't need to interact with each other a ton when it's obvious. When it's not obvious, we want to take time. We don't want to do it wrong. So take the time if you need to get it right. But we'd like to do it in a timely, quick, but not hurried and rushed manner. For line scrimmage officials, if you're with the sticks, you walk off with the center judge or umpire. If you're opposite the sticks, hold the spot until the center judge and the other wing have completed the enforcement, and then walk off the penalty with the umpire. I'm aware that umpires don't always walk off the penalty. They will certainly know where they're supposed to go. But the mechanics manual says that the umpire is supposed to walk. So I'm going to say that. Umpire and crew of 8, walk off the penalty with the press box wing to ensure proper enforcement. Deep officials, make sure we get the enforcement right. Make sure we know what we're doing with the clock. Those are the critical components of that. That's all I got tonight. Any questions? I recognize I went kind of quickly through some of that. I apologize. I'm trying to be courteous of everybody's time. Does anybody have any questions about anything?
Nick, can you put up the create files by replay screen again?
Yep. Not quickly, but I can.
And Nick, are you going to be sending this deck out?
Yeah, it's in the Google Drive, but I can do that.
Thank you.
Bill, this is what you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm seeing 7 here, and I'm just wondering if you combined one into 2 of them into one.
This one, the illegal forward pass or handoff with the including if the on-field ruling is reversed. It's like the first bullet and the last bullet in the rule.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And I did have a secondary question.
Mm-hmm.
Are all flagrant fouls ejections?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you think of one that wasn't?
No, I don't want to trying to conflate anything. I just want to have that in my head as a clarification.
Okay. So the last thing I will mention before I go for tonight is just to make sure we're all on the same page with when the next meeting is. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Jim Boer will be leading a presentation on forward and backward passes, IDP, OPI, mechanics, and philosophy on the 26th. And then we've got Devin Aller, Ken Cloud, and Frank Spryzak. We'll be talking about line of scrimmage and deep 3 teamwork. I'm not reading the title of that for them. And then hopefully after that point, I'll be sending out emails with, if you got a play you want to share it. We'll probably do that 4 times throughout the season. And then we'll blink and it'll be November, which is hard to believe. But that's all I got for you tonight. I appreciate it. The website's updated. I think I forgot to put the quiz on the website this morning. It's on there now if you want to take a look. I appreciate everybody being on tonight. Hope you got something out of it, and hope to see you all down the road. Thanks for coming. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. You're welcome. Have a good week.
Job.
Bye.
Good job, Nick.